Class number 2. We've had, I think, 2 weeks of no Pinocchio, and I think I can squeeze it in this week. All right, this is not a requirement to listen to this video by Friday. So if you want to leave it for Saturday or Sunday, you can. All right, no homework. It's just listening to the story. That's all it is. So I've read chapter 1 and chapter 2, and I'm going to try and read 2 chapters at a time so that we can get through the book a lot quicker. So I'm going to read chapter 3 and chapter 4 today. And if there's any pictures, I will show you the pictures. All right. So chapter 3. Geppetto lived in a small ground floor room that was lighted only from the staircase. The furniture could not have been simpler. A bad chair, a poor bed, and a broken down table. At the end of the room there was a fireplace with a lighted fire, but the fire was painted, and by the fire was a painted saucepan that was boiling cheerfully and sending out a cloud of painted smoke that looked exactly like real smoke. So all this was painted. It wasn't real, but it looked real. As soon as he reached home, Geppetto took his tools and he set out to work to cut out and model his puppet. "What name shall I give him?" he said to himself. "I think I will call him Pinocchio. It is a name that will bring him luck. I once knew a whole family so called. There was Pinocchio the father, Pinocchia the mother, and Pinocchi the children. All of them did well. The richest one of them was a beggar." Having found a name for his puppet, he began to work in good earnest, and he first made his hair, then his forehead, and then his eyes. When the eyes were finished, imagine his astonishment when he perceived that they moved and looked fixedly at him. So the eyes were looking right at him. Geppetto, seeing himself stared at by those two wooden eyes, he took it almost in bad part and said in an angry voice, "Wicked wooden eyes, why do you look at me like that?" No one answered. He then proceeded to carve the nose, but no sooner had he made it than it began to grow. And it grew and grew and grew until in a few minutes it had become an immense nose that seemed as if it would never end. Poor Geppetto tired himself out with cutting it off, but the more he cut and shortened it, the longer did the impertinent nose become. The mouth was not even completed when it began to laugh and deride him. "Stop laughing," said Geppetto, provoked, but he might as well have spoken to the wall. "Stop laughing, I say," he roared in a threatening tone. Let me turn the page here. The mouth then ceased laughing and put out his tongue as far as it would go. Geppetto, not to spoil his handiwork, pretended not to see, and continued his labors. And after the mouth was fashioned, he fashioned the chin, then the throat, and then the shoulders, the stomach, the arms, and the hands. The hands were scarcely finished when Geppetto felt his wig snatched from his head. He turned round, and what did he see? He saw his yellow wig in the puppet's hand. "Pinocchio, give me back my wig now." But Pinocchio, instead of returning it, he put it on his own head and was in consequence nearly smothered. Geppetto, at this insolent and derisive behavior, he felt sadder and more melancholy than he had ever been in his life before, and turning to Pinocchio, he said to him, "You young rascal, you are not yet completed, and you are already beginning to show want of respect to your father. That is bad, my boy, very bad." And he dried a tear. The legs and the feet remained to be done. When Geppetto had finished the feet, he received a kick on the point of his nose. "I deserve it," he said to himself. "I should have thought of it sooner. Now it's too late." He then took the puppet under his arms and he placed him on the floor to teach him to walk. Pinocchio's legs were stiff and he could not move, but Geppetto led him by the hand and he showed him how to put one foot before the other. When his legs became flexible, Pinocchio began to walk by himself and to run around the room until, having gone out of the house door, he jumped into the street and he escaped. Let me show you the picture of Pinocchio's nose growing, and he's like astonished, trying to shorten it, and then it just keeps growing again. Okay? So Pinocchio runs into the street and he escapes. And poor Geppetto rushed after him, but was not able to overtake him. For that rascal Pinocchio leaped in front of him like a hare, that's a rabbit, and knocking his wooden feet together against the pavement, made as much clatter as 20 pairs of peasants' clogs. Remember, his feet are made of wood. So on the cement, you hear all this clack, 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 clack. Okay? Stop him, shouted Geppetto. But the people in the street, seeing a wooden puppet running like a racehorse, stood still in astonishment to look at it and laughed and laughed and laughed until it beats description. And at last, as good luck would have it, a carabinier arrived. A carabinier is a policeman in France. Until it, let me see, I'm sorry, arrived who, hearing the uproar, imagined that a colt had escaped from his master. So the policeman thought it was a little horse by the way he heard his feet hitting on the cement. Planting himself courageously with his legs apart in the middle of the road, he waited, and with determined purpose of stopping him and thus preventing the chance of worse disasters. When Pinocchio, still at some distance, saw the carabinier barricading the whole street, he endeavored to take him by surprise and to pass between his legs, but he failed signally. The carabinier, without disturbing himself in the least, caught him cleverly by the nose. It was an immense nose of ridiculous proportions that seemed made on purpose to be laid hold of by carabineers, and consigned him to Geppetto. Wishing to punish him, Geppetto intended to pull his ears at once. But imagine his feelings when he could not find them. And do you know the reason? It was that in his hurry to model him or to carve him out, he had forgotten to make him ears. He then took him by the collar, and as he was leading him away, he said to him, shaking his head threateningly, "We will go home at once, and as soon as we arrive, we will regulate our accounts. Never doubt it." That means you're going to get it when we go home. At this announcement, Pinocchio threw himself on the ground and would not take another step. In the meanwhile, a crowd of idlers and inquisitive people began to assemble and to make a ring around them. Some of them said one thing, some another. "Poor puppet," said several. "He's right not to wish to return home. Who knows how Geppetto, that bad old man, will beat him? Geppetto seems a good man, but with boys he is a regular tyrant. If that poor puppet is left in his hands, he's quite capable of tearing him to pieces." Pinocchio at liberty and conducted, I'm sorry, it ended in so much being said and done that the carabinier at last set Pinocchio at liberty and took Geppetto to prison. Now, did Geppetto do anything wrong? No. People were gossiping and saying bad things about Geppetto and convinced the policeman that he was a bad man and took him to prison. The poor man, not being ready with words to defend himself, he cried like a calf, and as he was being led away to prison, he sobbed out, "Wretched boy! And to think how I have labored to make him a well-conducted puppet! But it serves me right. I should have thought of it sooner." What happened afterwards is a story that really is past all belief, but I will relate it to you in the following chapters. So there's a picture here of Pinocchio running out of the house into the street. Let me see if you can see that. That's Geppetto and Pinocchio. Okay, so I'm going to read one more chapter. It's only, oh, I'm sorry, no. Let me Yes, one more chapter. It's a very short chapter, chapter 4. Well then, children, I must tell you that while poor Geppetto was being taken to prison for no fault of his, that imp Pinocchio, finding himself free from the clutches of the carabineer, ran off as fast as his legs could carry him, that he might reach home. The quicker he rushed across the fields, and in his mad hurry he jumped high banks, thorn hedges, and ditches full of water, exactly as a kid or a rabbit would have done if pursued by hunters. Having arrived at the house, he found the street door ajar, that means a little open. He pushed it open, went in, and having secured the latch, threw himself seated on the ground and gave a great sigh of satisfaction. But his satisfaction did not last long, for he heard someone in the room who was crying. Cree, cree, cree. Who calls me? Said Pinocchio in a fright. It is I. Pinocchio turned round and he saw a big cricket crawling slowly up the wall. Tell me, cricket, who may you be? I am the talking cricket, and I have lived in this room 100 years and more. Now, however, this room is mine, said the puppet, and if you would do me a pleasure, go away at once, without even turning round. I will not go, said the cricket, until I have told you the great truth. Tell it to me then, and be quick about it. Woe to those boys, sorry, woe to those boys who rebel against their parents and run away capriciously from home. They will never come to any good in the world, and sooner or later they will repent bitterly. Sing away, cricket, as you please, and as long as you please. For me, I have made up my mind to run away tomorrow at daybreak, because if I remain, I shall not escape the fate of all the other boys. I shall be sent to school, and shall be made to study either by love or by force. To tell you in confidence, I have no wish to learn. It is much more amusing to run after butterflies, or to climb trees and to take the young birds out of their nests. Poor little goose, do you know that in that way you will grow up a perfect donkey, and that everyone will make fun of you? Hold your tongue, you wicked little ill-omened croaker, shouted Pinocchio. But the cricket, who was patient and philosophical, instead of becoming angry at this impertinence, he continued in the same tone. If you do not wish to go to school, why not at least learn a trade, if only to enable you to earn honestly a piece of bread? That means earn a living, work for money. Do you want me to tell you? Replied Pinocchio, who was beginning to lose his patience. Among all the trades in the world, there is only one that really takes my fancy. And that trade, what is it? It is to eat, drink, sleep, and have fun, and be to lead a vagabond life from morning until night. A vagabond is someone who just wanders around the country with no place to live. They sleep whenever it gets dark, they just find a place to sleep and they just keep moving and they don't want to work. Um, as a rule, said the talking cricket with the same composure, all those who follow that trade almost always end either in a hospital or a prison. Take care, you wicked little ill-omened croaker. Woe to you if I fly into a passion. Poor Pinocchio, I really feel sorry for you. Why do you feel sorry for me? Because you are a puppet, and what is worse, because you have a wooden head. At these words, Pinocchio jumped up in a rage and he snatched a wooden hammer from the bench and threw it at the talking cricket. Perhaps he never meant to hit him, but unfortunately it struck him exactly on the head. So the poor cricket had scarcely breath to cry, cree, 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 and then he remained dried up and flattened against the wall. And here's a picture of Pinocchio throwing a hammer at the cricket on the wall. And you can see how angry Pinocchio is. He's not very well self-governed, and that's because he hasn't been alive very long, but he's refusing to learn. It's going to be hard to teach him self-governance, isn't it? Okay, so I will try to read 2 chapters every Friday, and you can listen to the video on the weekend. It doesn't have to be on Friday. You can listen to it on Saturday and Sunday. All right, I hope you enjoyed the story. Bye bye.